The content discussed in this podcast is for informational and educational purposes only and should not be construed as financial or mortgage advice. Always consult with a licensed professional before making any decisions regarding mortgages or financial matters.
Welcome to the Canadian Mortgage Show. Here are mortgage professionals Alex Pang and Alex Shanks to cut through the BS and educate Canadians on all things mortgages and real estate.
Our political environment really emphasizes groupthink, and there's a real kind of incentive system if you just kind of keep quiet, keep your head down, just kind of go along, get along sort of thing. Pretty clearly that's not been me, and it's just because that's just not who I am.
Welcome to another episode of the Canadian Mortgage Show. Alex Pang here alongside my co-host Alex Shanks. You're listening to episode 54. Alex, we have a special guest today. I'm thrilled to announce we've kept it secret for a good week or two. Let me introduce you. He's been serving his hometown for over 15 years, first elected to city council in 2008, and then as mayor in 2018, where he made history with the highest vote count ever for a municipal candidate. Re-elected by acclamation in 2022, he's known for his common sense leadership, focus on community priorities, and commitment to making Port Coquitlam, we call it POCO in BC, Port Coquitlam, one of BC's best places to live. Let's welcome Mayor Brad West. Brad, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me, guys. Appreciate that intro. Well done.
You were saying offline, like, oh, don't say too much. I'm getting all blushed now.
Alex was joking about hitting on the hot girl, and yeah, we're both excited to have you here, and it's an honor. And I mean, we're not going to say do we have to call you Mayor Brad or Mayor West that way? We'll say Brad.
Please do. There's I'll tell you, ever since I became mayor, there's been a long-standing Family Guy jokes about Mayor West, so yeah. Brad works very well for me.
And then sorry, I don't know. Do you have kids, Brad?
I do. I have two young boys. I have a 8-year-old and 4, or as he would tell you, 4.5.
Yeah, I got a 6-year and a 2-year-old, 2 boys. Have they ever called you Mayor West? Like, has your wife ever said, like, hey, go talk to your dad and say, hey, what are you doing, Mayor West?
But usually more it's now bro, brah.
Oh,
we've entered that phase of life.
Yeah. No.
Well, my boys are I have 2 boys myself. They're 18 and 16. It's it doesn't matter what you do. You could be the celebrity, like whatever. You can be LeBron James or whatever. You're still dad to them.
Yeah.
They don't care what you do on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, which is the best, right?
I still get data. My 6-year-old, I still get data sometimes. My 2-year-old, I still get it, and it's I'm sad for when those days are going to go away.
I know it goes by so quickly.
Yeah, that's kind of interesting. We all 3 of us actually have 2. All of us have boys that way. That's it's kind of interesting. Boy energy is. I don't know about your boys out. Mine are destructive. They just want to break things.
Oh yeah, no. We've had to like relocate anything that could break to like another room, and it's like I said to my wife, maybe in like 20 years we'll be able to bring this stuff. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I'm giving you a snapshot of where you will be, Brad, because my oldest is a huge Canucks fan, and we got season tickets.
Nice.
So I take him to a game a year for his birthday, and he has first right to playoffs. Unfortunately, we haven't had playoffs that frequently in this town. Alex here is a Leafs fan, and he lives in BC. I think that's not right.
Okay, sorry guys, I'm gonna have to sign off now. It's been a lot of fun.
But yeah, Brad, you've been serving as POCO city councilor from 2018 to 2008. For 10 years before becoming mayor. Like, that's a good majority of your life. Like, what made you decide to go into a public service and having such a public life?
Yeah, I sometimes ask myself that. I just celebrated my 40th birthday this year. I'm an 85 baby, and
happy birthday, happy 40th.
Thank you. And I was thinking about it. It's remarkable that I've been at this for as long as I have. I got first elected to city council at 23. And I probably thought I knew everything at 23,
That is
and now I
great.
look back and I'm like, man, I was probably just so young. And then was elected mayor at 33. So both city council and mayor was the youngest ever elected in our city's history. But it's interesting. Like I never grew up in a like a political family. It wasn't that that I had family members who were politicians or anything like that. But they were very involved in the community, and that was sort of ingrained in us as an expectation that we would be involved in whatever way in our community and giving back. And so for me, I grew up playing hockey. That's was a big passion of mine. And so my parents would be involved in like the Poco Minor Hockey Association and volunteering and things like that, because I really appreciate that now. My oldest, my 8-year-old, he plays everything. So he plays hockey, lacrosse, soccer. And man, it doesn't happen without a whole bunch of people giving their time and volunteering to make it happen. And it's pretty special. And so just being exposed to that kind of community involvement and caring about what happens where you live, that was just something that we had in our family. And then it kind of led to an interest in what's going on in the community. And I've lived in Port Coquitlam my whole life. I started to get interested in politics through university. And then in 2008, something happened that is pretty rare in our city, at least previously, which is we had an election and a whole bunch of the incumbents decided not to run again. And so you knew it was going to be a competitive election. A lot of people were going to run. And I don't exactly remember how, but I talked myself into running. And I do recall that the main motivation at that point was that, Port Coquitlam's home to a lot of young families. I didn't have a family then, but I obviously was younger and planning to have a family one day and to grow up, raise kids in Poco. And, not to cast aspersions, but our city council prior to my time kind of resembled a retirement home. And, it's good to have all perspectives, but the one that was missing was, people who are younger. And for a younger city, I thought, well, we should have some representation. And so I ran in that election. And I remember there were 28 candidates for 6 spots. And I worked really hard at it and knocked on doors and talked to people. And I did that, basically in all my free time for, a good 6 months. And anyways, election day came and I came 3rd out of the 28. So I was one of the 6 who was elected, and it just kind of it went from there. And as I got more into it, got more and more passionate and saw that you could really make a difference at the local level, which I find really attractive and rewarding.
And maybe myself, but like as a counselor, like obviously, like is that like that's like when you're doing that, is that like are you working another job at the same time?
Yeah,
Doing
yeah.
that like that? Like do you get paid a sum for as a counselor, or is it fully unpaid? Okay, so you get paid a
Yeah,
little.
and it's actually quite a bit of work, but it's not a full-time position. When I first back in 2008, I think it paid about $26,000 if I recall correctly. But your responsibility is very significant because you're making decisions about the future of the city, and there can be very significant consequences to what you decide and the management of the city, the direction it's going to go, taxes, all of it. But no, I also had employment outside the city, and then that continued until 2018 when I was elected mayor, and then that is a full-time responsibility.
Totally.
What was your life before before city council? What did you do in your vocation?
So my degree is in communications, and so I worked for a series of organizations and companies, usually in the in the communications, media, and public relations realm. I think that background has probably assisted me greatly in my role as mayor because, there's a couple of distinct aspects to being in a mayor role or a leadership role. One obviously is around decision making, but another big part of it is communicating. And one of the things I've heard from my residents is they appreciate how communicative I am. So I don't like people to have to guess what's going on or, what the city's focused on or what the priorities are. So I think that background has served me well, and I think creates a lot of transparency for people in Port Coquitlam. They know what we're about. They know the direction we're going. And I think that constant communication is important. And then the other piece of it is getting the feedback, right? So not just having me go and tell everyone, hey, this is what we're doing, but also being able to listen and listen really well to the voices of our residents, understanding priorities, and then having that reflected in the city's priorities.
That's me and Alex have talked about this on like this government and just everything. Like you could not be very good at business, but if you can communicate properly and for one, let them know what you're doing or listen to them, like that is like the easiest form of how you need to run a business and run the government, where we've definitely seen where like we're not getting information, it seems like, or we're not listening to information. And I think I saw like you have like, I will say this, it always makes me think of like, I don't know if you've ever watched This Is Us, where the guy's a mayor and he has the open door policy. I think you have an open door policy. Did you take the doors off your door, or do you still have doors on your door?
I still have the door on the hinges to be closed when necessary for things like this. But no, I mean, my days start early and they go pretty late. And, and it's just a constant flow of people. And, I'm very interested in people and hearing their ideas and their stories and their feedback. And I think to be successful in any leadership role, you have to have a curiosity about you. Yeah. If I had a criticism of politics today, and maybe politicians, a lot of it is very robotic. I can hear politicians and they'll speak and I can't figure out what the hell they're saying. Like they speak in almost like riddles and they say a lot but nothing at all at the same time. And I think the public responds to authenticity, and you can maybe make a mistake, but if you're being genuine and real and authentic about things, and can own your mistakes, and make improvements, I think that will take you a long way. And so I made myself a promise a long time ago that if I was going to do this, and particularly at this level, I would do it as a reflection of who I am and the values I was raised with and what I believe. I wasn't going to become kind of like a robot and have someone else kind of feed into me, okay, here's what to say, here's what you think, and just go out and regurgitate that. And I think a lot of our politics feels like that.
I don't understand where it comes from. And I even like, let's on our mortgage side, Minox mortgage brokers, I find when I talk to people, like, I'd rather just tell them the honest truth. Hey, I'm sorry, like you don't qualify for a mortgage today. Hey, this is the problem. Like, or hey, this is what went wrong. Hey, this is how I'm going to fix it for you. Like that's what people want. I don't know why that doesn't like correlate. Like, hey, in politics, like, hey, you know what? We tried something. Shit, we messed up. I think people would react so much better to it. Of like, hey, you're being honest to us. Where sometimes, like you said, just we're talking in a circle, and it's like, okay, you didn't answer anything.
Yeah. Again, I think that's where having that curiosity about things and ideas and people is important. I'm always wanting to learn more, find out more, hear different perspectives, seek out perspectives that are different than mine. And our political environment really emphasizes groupthink, and there's a real kind of incentive system if you just kind of keep quiet, keep your head down, just kind of go along, get along, sort of thing. Pretty clearly, that's not been me. And it's just because that's just not who I am.
Yeah. For anything, you just have to be true to yourself. That's like, I
For
mean,
sure.
when you try to force yourself into something that you're not, I mean, people can tell. And that's where
Absolutely.
just being honest and getting ideas. Like for me and Alex, like when other mortgage brokers, I find a lot of people don't want to share information. They're like trying to hide it. I'm just like an open book. Like I could
Yeah.
tell everyone exactly how I run my business. They're not going to run it the same as me, even if I gave them every secret I have. But we learn from other people. If I share
Yeah.
something with Alex, I'm like, whoa, I'm going to do that. Like that's how we collectively learn in the world.
Absolutely. That's how things get better and we improve.
So, Brad, you kind of actually talked about it. I mean, you've been pretty vocal on social media, and you've been an outlier compared to your political colleagues. Have you gotten any blowback from the other mayors? Like, it's almost like, why are you speaking up? You're putting a spotlight on you. Like, what are you doing? Keep your thoughts to yourselves, kind of thing. Have you gotten any blowback like that?
Yeah, I mean, over the course of my time on particular issues when I've spoken out, sometimes it doesn't win you any popularity contests amongst other politicians, but has never been my goal. I have great relationships with other elected officials and colleagues, and I treat people respectfully, and and like to get to know people and curious about them and their lives. But um, I never got into this trying to fit into the status quo. And so, yeah, certainly on occasions when I've spoken out on issues that I think are important to my community or to our province or our country, I've had pushback on that. Again, I think the system is very orientated towards just keeping your head down. And, I mentioned that there are kind of incentives to do that. One of them is when you're the mayor of a city, you're quite dependent on the provincial and federal government for funding for various things that you may want to achieve. It could be, a new rec center. It could be, park, any number of different things that the city is responsible for. And so, there is this system where, the province and the feds have granting programs. And certainly when I've spoken out and at times been critical of decisions that other levels of government have made, I've had people who are kind of in the political orbit say, well, geez, you gotta be careful because you may not get, X, right? You may not, your community may not get, this grant or something like that if you speak up. But like, I think that epitomizes what's wrong with our politics. The idea that you would be punished for offering a different perspective or point of view, because it comes from a place of wanting us all to do better and to see improvement. So, it hasn't dissuaded me from speaking out up to this point, and I don't think it will in the future. And I'll tell you, the funny thing is, on a number of issues, I will have other mayors in private, in very quiet voices, kind of,
That was so awesome.
yeah, I agree with you. And
Yeah.
I just think it would be more honest.
Collectively, if all of you were doing it, like
Yeah, if people are
we
like,
came
hey,
together.
yeah, that's not going to work because of this, or what about that? And again, it's not coming from a place of trying to, make someone look bad. It's about how do we deliver the best possible outcome for the people who were elected to serve.
Yeah, I this harkens back to the show that I used to watch, House of Cards, and when it first came out with Kevin Spacey, I think the media was asking a U.S. congressman, "How accurate is this?" And the congressman said, It's actually pretty close. Like all the backroom dealings and all that stuff. Like, you know, people, I scratch my back, you scratch yours. Is it like that really? Like dealing with city politics kind of thing? Obviously less dramatized, of course.
Yeah. Um, I would say in Port Coquitlam, I am incredibly blessed to have a city council who are all very much on the same page. In that, you know, we all have kind of a shared goal of where we want to see the city go. Now, we have different opinions about, you know, certain issues or how to get there. Um, but you know, I'm not BSing when I say like it's genuinely like a very much a team approach, and maybe that's owing to my background in team sports. In that we can come together, we can challenge each other, but there's a level of trust there. We're not trying to make the other person look bad. We're not trying to gain a political advantage over the other person. And I see in the cities where I see dysfunction politically, it's because the agenda is not to try and get a certain outcome. The agenda is to try and make my political opponent look like an asshole or like a jack or bad or whatever, right? Or a failure. And I think when you get into a place like that, you've really lost the plot. Now, I think as you get into higher levels of office, there does start to be more of the, okay, well, you want this, so I need this to get, you know, that.
I
Um,
mean, that's
it,
business. Like I don't
well, yeah,
mind.
and I was
That
going
is
to make that
business.
point, right? Like, it's not, it doesn't all have to be nefarious,
Yeah.
you know, because life is full of compromise, right? And I think it sometimes I think that our government would do well to have more compromise in it because we tend to get very strident, you know, you're either this or you're that.
Yeah.
And the two sides can never come together or agree on something. So, you know, the if the if the outcome and the goal is something that is, you know, positive for, you know, society writ large, then I think the back and forth and the compromise is part of how you get there. Um, it's when you start to lose what is the overall objective, and it gets more about, you know, the kind of maybe personal objectives or goals, that I think you start to get problems.
I see. All right, so let's get into this. I mean, you recently posted an opinion editorial on the Bureau on basically everything Alex and I have been talking about this past year on the podcast. But as an elected official, like, thank you for saying it. But do you want to tell those any of our followers or viewers who haven't actually read your opinion piece? Talking about housing and mass immigration and all that stuff. Do you want to
Sure.
share what that was all about?
Yeah, well, I mean, to summarize, I mean, this is something that I've spoken out in at various intervals and in different forums over some time. And I'm not sure really what struck me, but at some point I decided, you know, I want to kind of bring this together in a longer form commentary. And I sat down and began to write it, and then Sam Cooper at the Bureau was kind enough to publish it, and you know, it got a ton of eyes on it, and I've had a lot of response, including, you know, being invited to join you guys, which I really appreciate. I mean, to summarize, what I'm concerned about I'm going to focus in on British Columbia, though I think this is very applicable to other parts of the country as well. British Columbia has put a hell of a lot of eggs in the real estate economy basket. You know, our province used to be synonymous with our natural resource industries, which are quite abundant, and which, you know, quite frankly, other jurisdictions around the world would kill to have even a fraction of what British Columbia has been blessed with. And for so long, those were the building blocks of our economy. That's not to say that real estate and housing didn't play a role. Of course, it did. But what has occurred is a transformation of the fundamentals of our economy to being one that is very tied to the real estate market. By most measures, real estate and its kind of ancillary uses account for about 30% of BC's GDP. By any stretch, that is way out of whack of where it should be. And so what I wrote was about the dangers of that and what it has necessitated, because once you get yourself to a place where the provincial economy is so dependent on real estate and government coffers are so dependent on real estate, you have to keep feeding that beast. It demands to be fed, because the minute you stop feeding it, things start to, the whole, as I think I described it, the whole house of cards as the TV show, right? That whole house of cards begins to fall. And so we saw really in the last 5 years a level of supercharged population growth through a variety of streams, whether it be non-permanent residents, international students, temporary foreign workers, and plain old immigration, that shattered records that had no other G7 country even close to it in terms of rate of increase. And I think now what has been laid bare is the fallout of that type of economic strategy for your country, for your province.
The hard thing is, like, I didn't even know if there was fully strategy to it. Like, I mean, yes, like we want to like bring people, and they had some targets, but like they didn't even start to realize, like, oh shit, like we went way past our targets. Like that's where it's just like, and I mean, that's where they could have come and say, hey, you know what, we messed up. We brought way too many people in. You know what? And like they're saying we're not going to bring them in, but there's never been a, hey, we messed up. It's just this is what we're doing now.
You've nailed it there, because I think a big part of this as well is just like the sheer incompetence or failure of the system. It's they obviously made a number of deliberate policy decisions that allowed for this, but then just the mechanisms of government failed as well. You'll recall at one point the federal government had to come out and basically said, well, they miscounted the number of people by like 1 million.
That's not a miscount. That's not a miscount.
Right. So like even the basic building blocks of being able to like administer and execute these programs, it's as if they just went like that and threw their hands up, and it's like, have at her. Well, have at her they did. And that's why, now when I hear the discussion around, okay, well, yeah, we're dialing it back. I have to tell you, it's hard to have a hell of a lot of confidence in their ability to do that.
Well, again, I don't feel like they don't have a plan to say, okay, well, we're going to dial it back to X amount because, hey, you know what? We brought too many people in. We know that put too much pressure on the housing, on the medical system. It's like, okay, we don't even know where that sweet spot is now, because we just went so far up. That's like, well, what if they cut it back too far? Like that is a true thing. Is like, what if they just turned off the taps instantly? It's like, oh shit, we've now turned it on too low.
Yeah, and the biggest thing that grinds our gears is they only make a move when there's such huge public outcry that they are forced to do something. I'm like, we've been calling this for the past 2 years already, 100%. and we just want to be, clarify. We are all immigrants at one point. We're not trying to be racist. Every one of us has been an immigrant at one point or another. Some have been here sooner than others. We're just saying make sensible immigration. If you're only building 200,000 houses a year, law of economics says if you have more demand and less supply, it's going to just artificially prop up real estate and rents, and things go crazy.
You're right. I mean, it's math. That's what it comes down to. I mean, it's just math. And I'm glad that you also mentioned about this not being an anti-immigrant sentiment. And I think, that's obvious, but also important to state, because when those of us who have been raising concerns, for much longer than just the last couple months, where now this has become the topic, when people have been at this for years, like you guys, I've raised concerns for years. You know, one of their first ways of defending what they were doing and trying to completely dismiss the idea that there was anything wrong that they were doing was to go to the, well, that's an anti-immigration, anti-immigrant card. And as
you guys are racists. And,
yes,
yeah.
right. And as you stated, we've all, my family, everyone, they've immigrated here at some point. So this is not about that. This is about the right and responsibility, by the way, of a country to be able to control the level of immigration and to ensure that they have the capacity to be able to absorb that. And it's done in a thoughtful way with a plan, not with a let's go full send on it and see what happens, which is basically what it feels like what they did.
I mean, immigrants coming in, like, we're pretty much sold a fairy tale. Like, oh, don't worry, you're coming to this amazing country. You're going to get this. And I mean, how many of them are now leaving because they're like, I'd rather go back to my country now. I can't get a doctor. I can't get a house. I can't pay for rent. I can't even stay here.
Oh, totally. I mean, one of the trainers at the gym I go to, he came over here, and he came over. He is a younger guy from Iran. He has like no alignment with Iran's theocratic dictatorship regime. Wanted to get out of there, and had the opportunity to come here. But like listening to him describe kind of what he was told versus what he experienced. And I mean, he ended up leaving, didn't go back to Iran, but he left. He actually managed to get into the States. But yeah, it has done a tremendous disservice to so many people, including the people who have come here.
Yeah, and another thing that Alex and I have talked about many times in the past is that, yes, him and I are in the real estate industry. So yes, we do benefit when real estate goes well, but we also recognize it's not healthy for our country. And I guess we as Canadians have somehow really love real estate. It's part of like, we love hockey and we love real estate. It's become like a fiber of our being. And we almost need to, like, before I got into the industry, real estate was seen as a long-term wealth creation, not a get rich quick. And somewhere along the line, maybe I was probably earlier than me, but 2010 to 2015, when offshore money came in and then people's buying pre-sales and flipping them like contracts and all of a sudden treating it like a stock. Honestly, we need to disincentivize real estate as a get rich quick vehicle.
Yeah, that's it. It's back to what it should be, is like buying in place, and hey, you have to fix it up. You actually have to add value to it. It's not like, hey, I bought it this year and hey, 2 years later it's worth 300,000, like, and I've done nothing to it. I mean, that just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, that's why I have so much respect for you guys, because you're in this industry and you see it, but you also understand that for our country and our people to succeed, we have to have a healthy balance, and we have to be in a place that's sustainable. Like, people, this expectation that we're on a roller coaster and it's just gonna it's just
Goes up
to the moon, man. Like, it's never gonna, and that's kind of that was the message that was sent to people. And it was not real. And it just, to believe it, you had to defy all the things that we know to be real, and economic laws and all of it.
Being places like I talked, especially, and I mean, Vancouver and Toronto have been hit some of the hardest areas, and especially like the outskirts of the Vancouver areas, like, places going 400,000 over asking. It's what even drove that? Like there was just no mathematical sense. It was just one person was like, oh shit, I don't want to lose this house. I'm buying it. And now there's people that have owned homes that they bought for 1.4. They're today worth $1 million. They can't even sell the home, which is just like that is not what should have happened.
Yeah. No, it you're right. The somewhere along the line, when it ceased to be, kind of considered to be, okay, this is like a fundamental building block of a high quality of life, and first and foremost, this is about like having a home, right? And yes, chances are that over time, that would be an asset that would increase in value, but within the confines of some fundamentals of our economy and reality, not exactly as you describe it. And I know people who got caught up in that. Oh, I'm gonna go camp out in line for a week to buy a pre-sale, and I'm gonna sell that piece of paper before a shovel even goes in the ground and make a couple $100,000.
And that's to me like those people, and we get like Alex and I get calls from people of like now that these pre-sales like they're coming up for construction, well they can't qualify for it. Like no one should have even let you go into this unless like you have a plan to close on this, not a hey, I'm going to give some money and gamble. I'm going to put $50,000 on black pretty much on the roulette table is pretty much what they did. And hey, it did work for some, like we can't deny that, but gambling doesn't work for everyone. It works for some and it doesn't work for everyone else. And we have seen like some of the bigger banks, like they are coming in and they're saving some of these projects. They're giving blanket appraisals to make sure that the value actually is correct, even though that they know that they're going to be negative, but they need to keep the commercial side, because if that card starts going down, well, then it's going to get bigger and bigger.
Yeah. Well, it seems to me like a lot of the decision makers and people who are pulling the levers on this, like they always had to know. Like you can't convince me that some pretty bright individuals thought that like this was going to go on without end ever. And it's the sad part is a lot of regular hardworking people have been and will be hurt because of this.
Yeah, so something that Alex and I have kind of floated and who's pioneered it was Vaughan, Ontario, and Mississauga. A huge barrier to entry of why our housing is so high is because of development costs. And there's a stat going out there that 30% of a home, let's say it's a $1 million home, 300,000 of it is some sort of development cost, some sort of government taxation, permitting and such. And that's kind of contributed to the cost because it seems like all levels of government wants their cake as well, wants their piece. And it's kind of like we're stuck in a rock and a hard place here, where we're flowing the idea that in order to attract business, attract not just real estate but for businesses, innovation to come to Canada, is we need to make it inviting for them, essentially lower the cost of entry.
Yeah.
And has that ever been talked about in your city or other cities in BC? Like instead of having the Holt Renfrew effect, like less quantity but higher cost, do the Costco Walmart effect. Let's just lower development fees. Let's make up the income by volume, and then we'll just build kind of thing. Has that ever come across, like the idea floated around?
I think this is an area where there has been so much disconnect and then, quite frankly, competition between the levels of government. In the same way that I describe, this sort of rocket ship to the moon and just feeding the beast, it's kind of a situation where government decided they had to kind of get in on it too. And I would hear things like, oh, developers making a shit ton of money. And so a lot of costs that would be normally funded through other revenue mechanisms that government has at its disposal, be that income taxes, sales taxes, I mean, any of the plethora of taxes that that we pay. Increasingly, government shifted that and thought, well, we'll satisfy that requirement
Over there.
through development,
Yeah.
right? And so they they made that very significant shift, and so it what you saw was increasingly new housing being responsible for massive infrastructure upgrade costs, along with providing new parks and rec centers, and the list goes on and on and on. And I think it was because government looked and they saw what was happening. They thought, oh well, we can do very well through this too. And now, as the shit continues to hit the fan, they got a big problem, because they have premised so much of their plans for revenue on development that's not happening anymore.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
So
No more property transfer tax because there's no sales happening.
there's the property transfer taxes down, development cost charges, amenity contributions. All of this is premised on all this development happening and continuing to happen, and just a nonstop escalation. And as we all know, because that's not happening, I think that there's a big kind of uh-oh moment coming, because what's going to fill that gap? Some of these things are not nice to haves; they're must haves. So who's going to be left holding the bag? And how is government now going to make up for the fact that they went and put all of their eggs in this development basket?
And that's a question on the PTT. I'll ask you this, Brad. Obviously, we know that's a provincial tax, but does that then get filtered out to the municipalities and everything? Like, is that where like funding comes from in certain things?
We don't see any portion of the property transfer tax. So that's not something that makes its way to municipalities.
Now,
Where-
in my head, why wouldn't that be? Why
Well-
why wouldn't that be something that is for the municipality that it's in?
Well, this again is, I think, an area that requires a full rethink, and we can't be locked into the status quo. Municipalities, because the province and the federal government takes the lion's share of the tax revenue through income tax and sales tax, property transfer tax, all of these different taxes and revenue streams. It means that the municipality is left with essentially property tax and those development cost charges that we spoke of. The challenge is that increasingly the federal and provincial government have downloaded a large number of responsibilities to the municipality and say, you're responsible for delivering this now, but there's no revenue stream with it. So that a lot of cities are in a tough place because they're trying to do more and more off the back of property taxation. So it really speaks in my view to the need for a much more comprehensive look at the full tax burden that an individual has, and I think we need to break out of the status quo on this and really think about how revenue is distributed amongst the different levels of government based on their different responsibilities, and have something that's more reflective of what is being delivered at each level of government. At the end of the day, for your individual person, like, you're not really distinguishing between the city, the province, and the federal government. All you know is it's money that you're sending to government. And so,
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I feel like we don't know, like in a sense, like we don't really understand where money's going, and it's sometimes like, oh, I hope this is going to the right spot. Like, is this actually going to go? And I mean, in all honesty, like I personally feel like the our roads are not upkept. Like where I live is best as good as they used to. We know that the medical and like just as a broad, like everyone is suffering that way. I honestly though, and I can see it up there is. I feel like the only place that seem to be keep getting bigger and nicer is firefighting halls. Everything else, like to me, is like going down. Ambulance stations are just like to me, like, well, why is no funding going to them instead of the firefighting halls? It's like you get like two brand new firefighting halls, and the ambulance station is still back from 1950.
yeah, and that's like, that's probably an example of, you know, how things have evolved in certain ways that may not make sense. Firefighting is the responsibility of the municipality, so it's funded and delivered by local government. The ambulance service is funded and delivered by the provincial government. Despite the fact that obviously there's a significant crossover there, there's so many different pieces to this. I mean, what I believe ultimately is that, governing is about prioritization, and we should be very upfront about what our priorities are. And I have always believed, and I try and reflect this in my own city, that job number one is to meet our core responsibilities, the reason why we exist. So in Port Coquitlam, what that has meant is that, they're not flawless, but we have invested in road upgrade. Our roads are in much better condition than they were when I became mayor, first became mayor. We've invested in cleanliness. In our solid waste pickup. One of my great claims to fame is that when we get a snow in Metro Vancouver and it's Armageddon and all that sort of stuff POCO has our snow removal dialed in. We've never missed a garbage pickup because of snow. And I see some cities all over the place canceling. Say, oh, your garbage didn't get picked up.
Behind that at snow time.
Admittedly, not the sexiest possible thing out there, but look, this is our job.
That's what if the garbage is getting taken, the city's not going to run.
This is what people send their tax dollars to City Hall actually for. And so job number one, before you're going to go off and save the world and stop global warming and all the wars and everything that's going on, you got to do your job. You got to do the basics and get those done right. And what I observe is that many cities, it feels as though some of these mayors or city councilors think that they've been elected to the United Nations, not to City Hall. And so their interest is not really around those basic core responsibilities. And I think you got to do job number one first.
Yeah, maybe you can help me after this, Brad. Like in our town, we only have two bridges. Like that's the only way we can get across. And now there are talks of funding. They're going to build a walking bridge. Now the cost for that is $11 million. The cry from people is like, we don't need this. We don't want this. It's still getting pushed through. Now, like it's certain things, like it's certain funding, like you get certain funding that like, hey, you have to do for stuff like that. Or like, is that, again, I just don't know the intricacies of like how the funds work. Like maybe the grant needs to go to something towards like that from the government. Have any insight that way?
Yeah, not knowing the specifics, a little challenging. But what I'll say is, I have certainly observed that senior levels of government will put a lot of strings attached to grant funding. And so it may be that they are dictating that, okay, we'll give you this money, but it can only be for this. Or maybe the city is aligned with it and says, no, we want to do this particular project. I'm going to go and venture a guess here that some of it has to do with a deliberate policy decision to try and emphasize or incentivize certain modes of transportation. And when it comes to transportation, there is a school of thought that some people subscribe to that, well, you got to get people out of their cars, and the way that you do it is by making it more difficult to drive. And eventually people just kind of give up in frustration, and they'll ride a bike instead, or they'll take transit, or they'll walk. And so for the record, I don't subscribe to this theory, but I wonder if part of what's going on there is they want to get people out of vehicles, and one of the ways they do it is by making it more difficult to get around in the vehicle, and they think again that people will just be there. That's why sometimes you see, well, why this prioritization over prioritization of like a bike, say a bike lane or something, when maybe what's required is additional road capacity. But this is where people start to put their political agendas into decision making, and you end up with things that the public is left looking at and thinking, well, that doesn't make sense.
And yeah, that's what I mean, like Brad, like that, like for answering just how you did it, like that's all I would ask from someone. And it's like we see, and we're talking about spending funds elsewhere in Canada on the federal level. It's like it's scary when we're like, well, why are we not helping the people locally? And let's say like that $11 million bridge. Well, we have a drug problem here in our town. It's like a lot of us like, well, why is that money not going over there? Like, why are we not trying to fix that issue? Why are we spending money over here? And as long as if someone can break it down and say, hey, like, we're trying to limit the amount of traffic because we know that we have an issue with our two bridges, and we need to try forcing people to go on bikes. Like if someone just said that, I'd be like, oh, okay. I mean, I may not agree with you, but like, at least it's for a reason. Like you're doing that for a reason.
Yeah. It for whatever reason, there seems to be a real reticence with just being honest and upfront with people. Instead they'll try and spin it, and the all kind of smoke and mirrors, and use specific words that are like vague, and again it gets to what we were talking about earlier, that our politics has been characterized, I think, not by direct and authentic discourse, but by kind of speaking in riddles, and a lot of spin, and everything is robotic, and our leaders are not even saying they're not even speaking their own words. They're saying what some political hack has decided that they should say.
Yeah, and that's it. That's a scary thought.
Brad, we want to ask your opinion about something, a few things. It's obviously not within your purview, but we do want to hear your opinion about it. Like the issue of white collar crime laws in Canada has come up recently because, man, it seems like the criminals are getting away with it. Recently, I mean, BC Lottery Corp fined $1 million for their, I guess, allowing the hockey bags of cash to flow through their casinos. And something in our industry, there's a real estate brokerage back east that got closed down for stealing $10 million of trust funds from buyers and whatever. And all that happened was they were just closed down, and that's it. And their license were taken away, but they were never like charged. It basically says like white collar crime is welcome for business in Canada, because you'll just get a slap on the wrist, or $1 million for BC Lotto Corp is just a slap on the wrist. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's a huge problem, and it's a problem for a number of reasons. First, because exactly what you said, it sends out kind of this bat signal that like, hey, here's an easy place to come do business for those who are unscrupulous and who are going to engage in those type of activities. I mean, in the BC Lottery Corporation example, I mean, it's pretty atrocious, because here you have a crown corporation, that has this kind of dual role in the province of being both a regulatory enforcer, but also a revenue generator for government. So it is kind of a classic fox guarding the henhouse situation. the examples of money laundering in British Columbia in our casinos were so blatant and in your face, and it is just total negligence on the part of the lottery corporation, that they did not act with a sense of urgency and authority around this. And to have them get nailed by FinTrack is pretty astounding when you consider this is a level of government, FinTrack, saying that another level of government, BCLC, was completely negligent in its responsibilities around money laundering. I mean, it's just if they're not if that's if they're not going to do the right thing, then I mean, it really shatters your confidence in the entire system. And the other thing that bothers me about it, and the example you give around the mortgage brokerage, it like for the people who are in that business who are busting their ass and doing the right thing, what does that say to you? I mean that someone could engage in that level of
It just
criminality.
it puts the fear of like, well, why would you come to us and be like, well, I'm just going to go to my bank? And I mean, the banks are getting fined, but they're better at probably hiding it, and people feel more comfortable. But it makes it like disheartening of like, well, I have to now explain to someone like, hey, like this is not how we do business. Like, and I mean, FinTrack, like because of this stuff, like what happens to us is we have to do more things. Now we have to prove more things. And it's like, hey, I need you to show me where that $5 went. Like, I understand that you bought something at a gas. I need to know where $5 went. Like, this is like, it gets a little bit overwhelming for someone. And then they're like, well, I'm just going to go somewhere else where this person doesn't care about that.
Yeah, this is like it harkens back to like the CRA, shaking down a waiter or a waitress for undeclared income on tips or something like that.
Multi-million-dollar business owner.
Oh, your name could be in the Panama Papers, and as several Canadians were. I don't think they've done a damn thing about any of that. So,
and I mean, that's the sad truth, that the people like that, if you have money, you can lawyer up and you can fight it. And the government's like, yeah, you know what? I don't want to go after that. I'm going to go after the low hanging fruit of people that, for one, they might not even fight it. They might just pay it, even though they may have actually not been doing anything wrong. But they're like, holy shit, you're telling me I owe you $10,000. I don't want to be in trouble. I'm just going to pay it.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's where we see a system that really has the deck stacked against people who, who don't have access to that level of power and wealth.
I feel like we're running tight here for time. The conversations we've had here have been absolutely amazing. I would say, like, if I was to move off Vancouver Island, Brad, it's based on your stuff. You may have sold me to live in Coco that way. Just hearing how you're running. I mean, it's not a business, but like just the way that you're running everything, and just the honest and transparency. I do really appreciate all that.
Well, thank you, and you would be welcome anytime. If you don't move here, at least come and visit us.
Yeah.
It's it really is a great community. I feel incredibly privileged and honored to serve as mayor here.
If Brad, if you have a few more minutes, there's one big question I do want to ask you. This is a big thing regarding land title. Recently you probably heard that the BC Supreme Court ruling in favor of the Aboriginal title for parts of East Richmond. Mm-hmm. And just this past weekend, the same thing over entire Haida Gwaii, including private property and stuff. Like, us in the industry, we're starting to get concerned about owning property in BC now. Like, if it almost undermines the foundation of what we deem as fee simple property. Like, what do you think about that?
Well, I'm greatly concerned about it as well, and I'm concerned that the provincial government doesn't really have a plan for how to deal with this. I've listened to some of the particulars around the Cowichan decision, and one of the things that I think is quite remarkable that's come up is that when this was going through the legal proceedings, the provincial government and the federal government, for that matter, did not advance the strongest legal arguments at its disposal in defense of fee simple property. And for something of this magnitude that can have just a profound impact, for them to kind of bring a knife to a gunfight is, I think, pretty atrocious and a real failing on their part. Now they've said they're going to appeal it, so we'll see how that proceeds. But on a whole host of issues that can be broadly defined as being under the sphere of reconciliation, I fear that the government is swinging the pendulum very, very far in one direction. I think all of us appreciate the need to do a far better job in working with Indigenous peoples and nations, and addressing wrongs, and allowing them to have a very secure and prosperous future, the same that we would hope for everyone. But the province is acting in such a way that they have taken us into along a trajectory that has no guardrails attached to it.
Do you think they really understand like how like I mean, I hope their lawyers like understand how like precedent is set and stuff. Like, are they like? I feel like they're trying to be caring and give, like you said, swing that pendulum a little bit of being like, hey, we need to go push this way right now. But I feel like they're not thinking about what is the fallout after that.
Well, this is the piece that I think is concerning, because I think their motivation, in their motivations, that they are not giving enough due consideration to the consequences of these decisions. And so one of the things that's been in the news recently is that the province is also looking at an update to the Heritage Conservation Act. What they are considering is such a expansion of that piece of legislation that it could make it incredibly challenging to build anything in the province on public property or private property, because it would necessitate you to basically go and get the consent of the First Nation, and go through an entire process that will be lengthy, costly, and have an uncertain outcome. Things like this are going to make it so that people are going to avoid British Columbia as a place to invest, as a place to do business, and maybe as a place to own property, because what they have done is they put a big question mark on all this stuff. And in the face of all that uncertainty, people will go elsewhere. So I am very concerned about what this can mean for.
I mean, I'm interested to see how like lenders, banks, and stuff like view this, and like how title insurance companies view this, because it's like, well, again, we have fee simple. You have title insurance to protect yourself. That's what the lender wants. It's like, well, what if those don't bar anything? It's like, well, are we all just leasing land then? Like, is that really what we're doing, and we actually don't own it?
Yeah, so we're running short on time, Mayor West. What's going on in the city of Poco? Do you want to tell us what's happening in your neck of the woods?
Yeah, there's something that I'm particularly proud of that's happening. Port Coquitlam has a lot going for it, but probably one of the best things about our city is that we're the hometown of Terry Fox, who I consider to be the greatest Canadian. And this weekend we've got two things happening. Tomorrow, Saturday, we're unveiling a new Terry Fox statue with members of the Fox family. It's under wraps. We're going to have a big reveal, but I've seen it, and it is incredibly impressive and very moving. And I think people will want to come and visit Port Coquitlam to see it. So that's happening on Saturday at 11 a.m. at the Port Coquitlam Community Center, if you hear this in time and want to come join us. And then the very next day, on Sunday, we have the 45th Terry Fox Hometown Run. And that's always a great event in our community. We get big turnout, people wanting to participate and carry on Terry's legacy and that happens at 10 a.m. over at the Hyde Creek Rec Center. I would encourage people to check those out if they can't make it this weekend. It's just another reason to come visit Port Coquitlam when you're able, because it's a great community, and we're striving to make it better every day.
Amazing. I'll let Mike know about the statue, because like he came home from school yesterday, and like he's in like incense in love with Terry Fox and everything, and it's a cool thing. I remember as a kid, when I was in elementary is when Terry passed away and everything, and just the news and all the stuff from it, and what he promoted. I wish we don't have someone like that came into our lives again. Like obviously it wasn't a good thing, but like I think we need something like that as a BC as a whole to bring everyone together. Like, hey, like we're all here for a reason.
Yeah, I think I speak about Terry frequently, and we've done a number of Terry Fox related things recently. And one of the things I would say is I think he's such a uniquely unifying figure. And at a time where it can feel that we're very divided, along a whole bunch of different lines, this is something that we can all come together and feel good about. I'm really proud of what the city has done here. I think it's going to be a real legacy. As I said, please come check it out.
Great. I even said before, like, Terry Fox needs to be on one of our dollar bills. He's that big of a figure. So this has been great. Thank you, Mayor Brad West, for coming on the show. We would love to bring you back on down the line. This has been amazing. One final question. You don't even need to answer this. You should run for premier or prime minister one day. You don't need to answer. We'll keep it at that. Well, folks, thanks for tuning in to this special episode of the Canadian Mortgage Show. We'll see you next time.
Now, if you enjoyed this episode, make sure to like and subscribe. If you're listening on Spotify or Apple, make sure to follow us. Please give us a 5-star rating. You can even send us an email, because we want to know what you guys want to hear about. That's what we're here for. Reach out anytime.